everybody, and welcome to Bad Hasbara.
The world's most moral podcast, which I won't even try to do in a South African accent.
Yeah, no, it's an impossible accent to do, although I've heard that when I do my British accent, everyone thinks it's South African. My name is Matt Lieb, and I'm going to be your most moral co-host for this podcast.
I'm Daniel Mate. I'm your other most moral co-host for this podcast.
That's right. We're both wearing black. That was not planned, but we both look good. We got sort of a twinsies thing going on. I like it. You look good.
Nebish is in black.
That's right. Mention black.
This is my Hosono shirt.
Oh.
Haruomi Hosono. I featured
one
of his albums a few weeks ago.
This is my shirt that someone sent me from a listener from this podcast. It's 1948. People think it's like a polo shirt. They're like,
it looks like a golf tournament.
Right. It looks like a golf tournament. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's a guy throwing a rock. It's that picture from, I think it was the Great March of Return, of that really svelte hot guy who was throwing a rock and holding the flag. I think that's him.
It's the official T-shirt of the Palestinian shot put team from the 1948 Olympics.
Dude, I mean, that is... that needs to be an actual Olympic game. That sounds amazing. I mean, shot put is, but anyways, so excited to have you all here. 5 stars, reviews, all of those things. I
guess it was the Maccabi games technically. Anyway, go forward.
There we go. So we haven't had a review on Apple Podcasts in a month, and I'm getting a little bit, I miss you guys. So please go to Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcast allows reviews. I did not know this.
Yeah, that's you can.
Oh, you mean for the show overall, not for
overall?
Yeah,
episodes, not for individual episodes.
And it doesn't allow comments.
No. Yeah, tell Tim Apple what's up, and say hi to him, and also give us 5 stars, and let everyone know to listen to the podcast. Do that as soon as you can.
An Apple review a day keeps the Hasbara bots away.
I like it. Also, we still have a little bit of merch available on badhasbara.com. We finally made a shirt, so go ahead and if it's not in your size, then we're gonna make a few more. But we're gonna make just enough to keep the hogs happy. And
no, fuck that, man. If it's not in your size, either lose some weight
or gain it,
girth, or gain some.
That's right.
You come to us.
That's right. After everything we've done, you can't change your body like Christian Bale in The Machinist and or Fat Bastard and Gold Member. So get yourself a t-shirt and stop complaining about it or something. I don't know. Shout out to producer Adam Levin. He's always on the 1s and 2s. And please come to the Ice House in Pasadena this Friday. That's September 5th. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Today's the 2nd. Third is Wednesday, 4th is Thursday. The 5th, September 5th, Ice House, Pasadena. Do that. Also, October 13th, we're going to be at the Bell House. Come to that.
How was Houston, man?
Oh, Houston was great. Houston was a lot of fun. It was like we don't have as much of a following in Houston, so it wasn't as sold out as the other ones have been, but it was really fun. Houston pro-Palestine activists are awesome, and I got to hang out with Sim Kern.
Oh, how nice.
Sim was there. Yeah, we hung out afterwards. We had some Tex-Mex. I had some queso, yummy queso, which is cheese in Espanol, but it's melty and delicious. And
did you say to the crowd at the end, Houston, we have no problem?
Oh, that's a good joke. I should have done that. Use that next time you're in Houston.
What if I use it in Brooklyn at my stand-up
Just use it in Brooklyn.
special?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, hey, I wish I was doing this in Houston. You know what I would say then?
If I was in Houston, I would say, no, what I did mention, though, was apparently Houston has a giant network of tunnels. and so I just kept talking about it. Houston has Hamas tunnels. That was a lot of fun. People enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And today's episode is brought to you by the Gaza City Flour Fund. Once again, the Gaza City Flour Fund is raising money to feed up to 250 families in and near Gaza City with 2-kilogram sacks of flour purchased at disaster premium prices given directly to hungry families. From the last fundraiser that we've done, that we did for them, they are close to spent. So we need to, number one, we need to do another live stream fundraiser. And number two, since you're listening and or watching, and there's a link in the description, why don't you go ahead and go to bit.ly/Gaza Flower Fund. Donate now, and also, donate early, donate often. That's what I say.
Did you see the video of the woman like thanking us in Arabic?
I did. And
by name?
Yes. I have that right here. This is so just I'll read it for those of you who do not speak Arabic. It says, thank you, Bad Hasbara, for this charitable effort, who provided us with this food aid during the siege.
That's you all. That's not us. That's you.
That's you guys. And high prices and famine. Let's see. May God bless you. May Allah reward you with goodness. And we hope for more of them. Very, very sweet.
Go back to the very beginning. I want to hear her actually say our podcast name.
Oh, yeah, here it is. It's very, again, did not ask for that. I appreciate it. Of course, it makes me feel good to know that our, fundraisers, you're seeing it in action, things actually getting to people in need in Gaza City, especially now the siege is only ramping up. Bombardments have, I think killed 78 people since yesterday. It is just insane out there. And so they need all the help they can get. So please donate. There's a link there. And do that. Daniel.
Homie.
What's the spin?
Well, first of all, Matt, I'd like to give a special shout out to the gentleman on YouTube who on every single video of ours provides a timestamp which says to skip the spin.
There's always one. There's always someone.
But that guy, he's also shepherding people.
Yes.
He's shepherding people past the call to action, past the charity.
That's true.
Past the theme song. Dude.
Yes. Yeah. Evil. Yeah. That's, but also
evil, impolite and evil. There's a
do not
reference.
There it is. Do not skip the spin. Never skip the spin. People don't skip the spin. Most of the comments are people talking about the spin. It's starting to piss me off.
Yeah, people like it. Anyway, we just had Labor Day yesterday.
Yes, we did.
We were recording this, and I've got this compilation album. Not even a compilation. It's like a recording of a protest in Washington, D.C. in 1982, released on Worker Records with Bayard Rustin and Pete Seeger and a bunch of folk singers and union leaders giving speeches talking about how Reagan is the first president in X number of decades to propose cutting Social Security. And it's like they're talking in real old school union language. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Then I've got the Beastie Boys, Check Your Head, with the song Funky Boss, Funky Boss, Funky Boss, Funky Boss, Funky Boss, Funky Boss, Get Off My Back, which is what all the workers say every day, but especially on Labor Day. That's the album Check Your Head.
It also sounds like they're saying Funky Boaz, which is an Israeli name.
That's right, Funky Boaz.
I know a couple of really good Boazes.
We have the very verbose back-to-back rapper Aesop Rock with the album Labor Days.
Oh.
Perfect for Labor Day, am I right?
Yeah, I get it immediately.
Penultimately, we have Johnny Paycheck with Take This Job and Shove It.
I love that song.
Which should be Take This Job and Unionize It, but still, it's an anti-boss pro-worker outrage song. And finally, Yes, with the album 90125, which was yesterday's date.
Wow. Look at that.
September
That's crazy.
1st, 1925. This is the record with Owner of a Lonely Heart on it. So.
Oh, that's a great song. I love that song.
I first heard it or became aware of it in a Weird Al Yankovic polka medley from the mid 80s.
That's right. Back when he used to do the medleys.
Yeah.
He would polka-fy medleys. What a genius. That is what is spinning today. And now to introduce our wonderful guest, someone I'm very excited to have on, someone who I worked for when I worked at AJ Plus, the editorial lead of AJ Plus.
Speaking of funky bosses.
This is a funky boss right here. Get on my back, I say. And let's ride into the sunset. I'm a horse. He is the editorial lead of AJ Plus. He's also a South African liberation movement activist. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, welcome for the first time, hopefully not the last time, to this podcast, Tony Karon. Hey, Tony.
It's an honor. It's a mitzvah.
It is.
Yeah.
And Simcha.
Yes. I'm so glad you could come on. I've wanted to have you on for a while, and it's you're, for me, one of the most interesting people I've met. I probably never told you this. No, I know. To be honest, I stay at home mostly. Yeah. I don't meet interesting people. No. I meet a lot of DoorDash guys. They're pretty cool. But in terms of other human beings that I've met who aren't delivering food, you are truly an interesting person. You are an anti-Zionist Jew. You are, the editorial lead at AJ Plus, and also you have had experience in the in movements for liberation. So can you start? Let's start off by me asking about your time as a student activist in South Africa. What was that like?
Well, it was a real privilege to live through a moment where it felt like we were making history, and we did, although, it didn't turn out quite the way everybody wanted, but maybe that's how history works. The ball is moved, and it definitely takes you to a better place. So
can I ask you a quick question about that?
Yeah, of course.
Before I forget. Is the fact that it ended up differently than you planned or mapped out, or what the ideal scenario was in the movement's mind, is that a caution to movements not to get too attached to a particular thing? Or is it just shoot for whatever you're going to shoot for and then let the chips fall where they may? It's a relevant question, I think, to
it's a big one.
Movement,
It's a big one. I mean, I think it's understanding that history is always in motion and there really is no end. Mm-hmm. So you are trying to roll a rock, but there's no destination in history. So every time you advance things, you change the conditions under which you continue to struggle for justice. Mm-hmm. I mean, the lessons in terms of Palestine activism, we could go into this at length, but really, like, what was interesting, so many things to talk about, because there's sort of, I start off in the left Zionist movement because South Africa is so segregated that the only politics I have access to as a teenager is Habonim.
I'm from Habonim.
Habonim. By the way, Joe Slovo, I don't know if you know the name, he was also a member of Habonim. Joe Slovo becomes the head of the ANC's armed wing, the head of the South African Communist Party.
Nice.
But he'd been a member.
Kanto was Sizwe.
I'll tell you what, when I was a kid going to Habonim camp, the most hardcore movement people and the most hardcore Zionists were the Habonim South African exports who would come and work at our summer camp. Like they were, they were intensely, fiercely. I don't mean like militaristically Zionist, but passionately, full-throatedly.
The left Zionism, which was a fantasy, which we sort of realized. Look, one thing I'll say about Habonim is more of us in South Africa ended up in the liberation movement than ended up in Israel.
So interesting.
Good.
And the movement was very. I learned about all kinds of left theory and politics and ideology and in Habonim. So this was, and I've seen that over successive generations. The movement's very open to you making your own choices. I got Uri Avneri's Israel Without Zionism from a Habonim Madrich in 1978, and I was like, oh shit, you mean the Nakba really happened? It wasn't just some propaganda? No, they were like Jews there doing it and not telling you about what they did. So I was like, like it koshered kind of taking on the Nakba. It's like,
you heard the word Nakba in that context?
I don't know if it was the word Nakba, but it was describing the ethnic cleansing. Yeah. And Uri Avneri's there and he's talking about what he did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if Jews are saying it, then it can't be anti-Semitic.
And that's one of those things. I mean, it's the kosherizing of this stuff plays an important role, whether or not it, is necessarily the most pleasing thing to hear. it is unfortunate but true that you sometimes need to hear it from other Jews first before you can start questioning that thing in your mind that says, why do I need to hear this from other Jews? You know,
and I think the reason is because we've all been raised in this kind of psychotic tradition that the Holocaust never ended and that's all that matters. And so basically we've been told we're a paranoid tribal entity that everybody hates and wants to destroy. So it actually, it's why some people, and myself, confessionally at the age of 17, I needed to hear that from Jewish people to make it
100%. Yeah,
I like that. Kosherized. The lies need to be slaughtered halachically.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, Circle K on the lie. Yeah.
When they, there's a moment in that Habonim time. I go to Israel on a Hadracha course in 1978. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, this is very familiar. South Africa, this feels like apartheid. This is like, you can feel, it's like, okay, I'm a little uncomfortable with this. But I remember having a fight with a Beitar person a couple of months later. Beitar being the youth movement of what Netanyahu represents today.
Oh, yeah, we know.
And we were like, these guys are fascists.
The bear Jews.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly. And they're unapologetically fascist. And we're like, you guys are fascists. You did Derya sin. That's a stain on the Zionist, Orla Goyim, the light unto nations. All this idealistic bullshit.
And they say thank you very much for the credit.
What they say.
That's one of our favorite things on our resume.
Well, they basically say to me, you think we'd have a state of Israel without Derya sin?
Right.
And I was like, you know what? They're right. Yeah. And I can't be, which is why I can't be a Zionist. And, soon after the shaliach, emissary from Israel to Habonim, when I'm 18, basically says, no, you're actually a Bundist. And I'm like, now this is 1979. There's no internet. Like, what the fuck is a Bundist?
Yeah.
So, you have to go look it up. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's actually right. Like the first anti-Zionist organization was Jewish. It was Yiddish.
Right. That's right.
By the way, my father spoke Yiddish to his mother, Yichreden Abissel. And the Zionists tried to shut down Yiddish completely. Like, they banned Yiddish theater in Israel in 1949.
That's right. And it's interesting in terms of, Bundism.
By the way, anybody who wants to know about Bundism, Molly Crabapple is coming out with the book you have to read. But so basically...
Can you explain Bundism, though, real quick, just for those of us who don't know?
Yeah. The Yiddische Arbeiterbund was the biggest political organization among Eastern European Jews. It was a socialist movement. It was part of the Second International. So it had a relationship with the Bolshevik Party, but it wanted, Jewish cultural rights, language rights, etc. And it was the first organization to fight Zionism, literally fight. They would fight in the streets. They saw Zionism as like a petty bourgeois. I love using petty bourgeois as an insult. Petty bourgeois nationalist movement that basically they had this ideology of Deutschheit, which meant here we are. This is where we're staying. We don't need to migrate to a distant country or whatever. We're here to fight, and you fight anti-Semitism along with everybody else who's fighting the anti-Semites, which are basically the Tsar, the people in power.
Right.
And that for me is a life lesson. In apartheid South Africa, South Africa was...
Have you heard that Europe now has an anti-Semitism czar? Literally.
Yeah. No, I mean, this monstrous, what gets called anti-Semitism today is kind of laughable. It's like, oh my God, there's a deli in Queens that's called Gaza. I really feel unsafe.
We got to send over the anti-Semitism Cossacks over to stop the. They're ordered from the anti-Semitism czar.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, in South Africa, okay, I grew up with anti-Semitism. Like, the regime had been aligned with Nazi Germany, the National Party. The Prime Minister Forster had been in an internment camp because he was part of the underground operative of the Abwehr, it was called, the German intelligence. And these guys were anti-Semitic, And, there's a lot of country club anti-Semitism and kind of teachers coming into the class saying there are too many Jews here. And, this kind of stuff. But, hey, in South Africa, you never could have imagined that we, a bunch of white privileged Jews, were the victims.
Right.
Like, it was obvious, Anne Frank in South Africa was a black woman.
Right,
like,
right, yeah.
And that, that thing I see in America, it's just weird. It's weird how this constructed Holocaust memory, as in, everybody's still living through the Holocaust, and everybody's a survivor.
Right.
You could have been, you could have been an Arab Jew. I mean, even in America, because of the restriction, the blockage of Jewish immigration, most Jews in America evaded, skipped the Holocaust because they didn't allow the survivors to come here.
Right.
That is American anti-Semitism that never gets a mention. Okay, sorry. This is a bit of a rant.
No, it is interesting though. It is. I mean, there's this almost this focus on a community trauma that where you almost have memories. It's like I have memories of the Holocaust because I was constantly inundated with Holocaust education. This is
immersive Holocaust education.
Immersive.
That was designed specifically to implant. I mean, Klein talked to us about this prosthetic trauma. It's implanted in you as if you were there, and that's how they purport or hope to teach you about the importance of it. But that's not what they're doing. They're teaching you to see it everywhere.
I grew up maybe a few blocks away from the Simon Wiesenthal Museum in LA, the Museum of Tolerance it's called. And, we would go into these, into these like field trips there, and it was immersive. It was literally immersive to the point. And what I always found interesting was, I had friends who were parents were Holocaust survivors and whatnot, but for the most part, the vast majority of the Jews that I grew up with, their family history was such that they had moved, in the early 20th century before the Holocaust, and yet there's this kind of, to put it, a little bluntly, stolen valor that comes from talking about the Holocaust, especially in a way. I mean, your experience as a South African Jew is very interesting to me because of the fact that you have such a legal, systematized other, such so as to not, where you yourself are not the one who is the other. Like, it is the law that you are not the other based on the fact that you're white, which is, I think, an interesting thing in sort of like post-civil rights United States, where now, you have people saying with a straight face that they, as a white Jew, are facing as much, if not more, racism than black people in America, which is like it's patently absurd, but they say it with a straight face.
I think that's what this engineered, this Holocaust, like the traumatization industry that is sort of Jewish communal life when it's under Zionist sort of guidance, which is that basically the Holocaust was a singular event and basically nothing else matters ever since. Right. So, I take the Primo Levi.
It was sui genocide.
Yeah.
Yes.
Primo Levi comes out, survives Auschwitz, and he's writing about the Holocaust's universal meanings, the kind of never again for anybody. But no, this is like, you can't do that. You can't situate the Holocaust in history even.
Right.
It's something that happens completely separate from history, and it's the last word. And so, the Holocaust Museum in Washington is opened when? 1993, I think. The African American History Museum is opened in like 2016.
Right.
It's like, no, this is what we talk about when we talk about racism and oppression. We talk about the Holocaust, because guess what? We don't have to talk about Native American genocide or slavery. It's
and American Jews have the gall to complain about African American resentment of Jews.
But
it's interesting because
I'm not going to go there.
James Baldwin wrote a great essay about it. It's just it's one of those disconnects that I think is if it weren't plowed into your brain, from a young age, I think, you wouldn't have any excuse. But from a young age, you are sort of told, that this victimization didn't just happen in history, but it's still currently happening. Even if with your own eyes, you can see that you're experiencing America as a white person,
Yep. And there's a parallel, or it's even a more extreme version inside Israel itself, with the March of the Living, where you take every 15-year-old, I don't know about every, but you take tons of 15-year-olds to Auschwitz, and you subject them to this traumatic, psychologically conditioning experience, and they come away believing they are survivors. And this is like a number of Israeli writers have drawn attention to this. Like a majority of Israeli teenagers, like a few years ago, there was a survey, 17-year-olds, whatever, 70% or whatever, believed themselves to be Holocaust survivors. Now, the majority of that cohort are actually Arab Jews.
All right.
The Holocaust never touched their families or their, this is, and literally Ben Gurion is open about, he brings Eichmann to Jerusalem partly because he has to immerse the Arab Jews in the story of that never happened to them.
Right.
But they have to feel it. They have to feel when they are going into Gaza and blowing up, schools and hospitals and whatever else, that they're fighting Nazis.
In the process, erasing any historical memory that they, in their lineage, would have of coexistence with Muslims, of integration into Muslim society, of who their parents and grandparents, friends, neighbors, lovers, employers, employees were. I was speaking of sort of the advantages of a Habonim education versus a lot of other Zionist youth movements. When I went to Auschwitz and Poland more generally and other camps, it was on a trip, not March of the Living coming from North America for a couple of days and then being jetted to Israel for the cathartic happy ending. But rather, I was living on the kibbutz in the Negev for 10 months. And in the context of that, we went to Poland for 10 days. And they took us not just to the camps. They took us to Warsaw and Lublin and Krakow. And we went to the old Jewish ghettos, and we went to the old synagogues, and we spoke to survivors, and we spoke to Jews now, and we spoke to Christians now, and we learned about the 1,000-year history of relative coexistence there, obviously with hiccups and ups and downs, but a history of tremendous richness and culture. And as opposed to this lachrymose view or bleak view of Jewish history, we were taught something much different, which felt very different then to come back to Israel. We came back, we were already not too many illusions about what kind of country we were in, but it wasn't that kind of emotionally manipulative cold plunge into genocidal history and tribal attachments. I can appreciate that, because if I'd had that, I think it may have been much harder for me to I think it was kind of a privilege in a way to be a Jew in South Africa. I mean, in many ways, obviously.
Right.
But actually being able to detach your Jewishness from basically the sort of Zionist worldview that kind of shuts everything outside of, the sense that you are the primary victim throughout history and still, because it was so obvious who the primary victims were. So, and then you the weird thing about, it's not weird, well, interesting. In South Africa, the Jewish population was about 3% of the white population. So the white minority that was, 10% or whatever of, the overall population, the Jewish population was just 3% of that.
Right.
Okay. When I joined the liberation movement, the generation just above me, many people, one of which, actually, I had this fantastic moment of discovery in the 80s when, working with a woman called Amy Ritzstein. Her pre-married name was Amy Ritzstein. She was Amy Thornton when I was working with her. Like old Jewish lefty, and she had been banned under the Suppression of Communism Act in 1960, under house arrest and so on. But she'd been hiding Mandela when he was on the run, etc. Real good comrade. And she had been allowed to teach at a Hebrew nursery school. And I was like, which one? She said, Camps Bay. I was like, what year? 65. I went and found my report card signed by her. So, but, okay, why am I telling you? Why my red diaper, my closest I come to a red diaper.
Yeah.
But, okay, what's interesting, why I'm raising this, is when I joined the liberation movement, the generation ahead of me, of the white comrades, literally about 70% are Jewish. right? Jews are less than 3% of the white population.
Yeah, yes.
So there's a real tradition of kind of Yiddish left-wing
Really puts into
activism.
perspective
But
the American Jewish tendency to take credit for the civil rights movement.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we were there.
Yeah.
But we weren't there in those numbers. And
no, but the numbers are
Certainly.
still tiny. We're talking relative. The numbers are still tiny. And what was to me really cynical after liberation, the Jewish Board of Deputies, etc. Oh yeah, Jews played a really powerful role in the struggle. And here's Joe Slova, and there's Ronnie Kasrils, and there's Ray Alexander, and and like, yeah, what did you guys think of them back then? Because we were a minority, the people who joined the liberation movement among Jews, and they were like, we are bad for the Jews. We're going to get the Jews in trouble. Like,
right.
Well,
So
maybe it's more similar than I'd like to think.
It is.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so I want to hear about towards the when things started to change before the end of apartheid, because obviously I don't make it a habit of forecasting anything, and I'm essentially a pessimist at heart.
That's a Yiddish trait. Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm epigenetically a pessimist. But I've in terms of when things started changing, when you actually started seeing something beyond kind of the same peaks and valleys of any kind of movement, what do you think? I mean, it's hard for me to ask you, like, what was the one thing that did it? But what? Give me, like, I don't know, two things. What do you think changed?
Well. What changed? I mean, look, the mass movement emerged, begins to form in the 1980s. You want the big picture history. Why is there a mass movement being created? Because the ANC leadership in 1979 goes to Vietnam. And, until then, the ANC had been doing sort of small guerrilla, trying to infiltrate guerrillas into the country, and they weren't lasting very long, and it wasn't having any impact. And the Vietnamese were like, what the fuck are you doing? You have to build a political base. Like, that's what's going to be, decisive. And so the ANC's political underground was basically tasked with creating a mass movement, building civic organizations, women, student, youth, trade unions, etc. And, not all of that was ANC. It was the ANC was feeding into it. But so I come along in the 1980s when that stuff is just taking root, and it's amazing. You live in this apartheid society, but suddenly, on a weekend, you're in a hall full of, thousands and thousands and thousands of black people singing, like literally. That's the thing I find saddest about American left-wing activist tradition. There are no songs.
We can't, and every time, you know what, we're just too self-aware. Like, I include myself in this whenever I'm, marching and someone passes out like a lyric sheet for a song we're going to sing. I'm like, no, I'll let you guys do it. I'm too shy.
I'd be more up for singing than I am for chanting. And I get the value of chants, but I agree. I was listening to the Solidarity Day album, and the melodicness and the structure of the song, which side are you on? And Solidarity Forever. These are bops,
Yeah. And for me, it was a bit like Shul. As in, you're marching down the street singing a song in Xhosa. You don't actually know what all the words mean. It's like being in shul and singing
while walking down the street.
It's like, words.
Doing a Xhosa daven is great.
Exactly. It's called a toy in South Africa. But I think, what happens is this movement grows, and it becomes clear the regime cannot destroy us, right? But also, at a certain point, like around 89, so we can't actually destroy them either. So there's kind of it's like a points situation in a boxing.
It's a Mexican standoff is what we would call it here. Everyone's pointing guns and no one is firing, and everyone's stuck.
I wonder how Mexicans feel about that term.
I
think they remember some guns being fired.
Listen, this is, if you watch a lot of Westerns, that's what they call it. Are Westerns racist? I don't think so. But
Matt, are you disappointed by the answer that it wasn't Little Stevie who freed? No,
but I mean,
I'm a Sopranos fan, so
I think there's more. I mean, I think, honestly, so obviously, without the mass movement, none of this would have happened.
Of course.
It was far more important than the armed struggle. It was far more important, it was more important even than international solidarity stuff, even though that was important, was the fact that you basically had hundreds of thousands of people mobilized into structures willing to actually confront the cops on the streets, etc. The thing that happened that really shifted the dynamic completely happened completely outside of our field of vision, which was that the Berlin Wall came down. And the Americans said to the South African regime, look, we don't actually need you as an ally against communism anymore. You should settle this while you're ahead or while you're still on your feet.
Right.
And so they open space and they start negotiating. And yes, I mean, there's South Africa's democratized, no question. Like there's a one person, one vote election. You have governments that represent the people now and so on. Could the ANC have done more to sort of push the social justice agenda? Absolutely.
Right.
And not at the negotiating table, but what happened was the mass organizations were kind of demobilized as soon as So, yeah, I mean, that's for another day.
So speaking of mass organizing and mass protests, I wonder what your assessment is from wherever you sit of what happens in the streets of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or the crowds that, I mean, there aren't massive crowds that go to the border to try and support.
But there are now crowds.
There are now crowds, but
yes.
We see hundreds of thousands of people. We see organizations like standing together.
Right.
I never know quite how to feel about these crowds because I don't hear a unified message. I don't hear a unified anti-apartheid message. I hear a lot of self-absorbed Israeli, this is bad for us. It's not nearly as radical, or it doesn't seem nearly as morally outraged and as internationally self-aware as the Lebanon protests were in the 1980s. There seemed to be more of a sense of this is not who we want to be. What's your assessment?
That's a very interesting question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. I think the South African example that kind of comes to mind, because in some ways the numbers are not dissimilar. Like, we were a tiny portion. Like the people who were in the ANC, or would even directly, unambiguously supported the ANC in the white community in South Africa was tiny. I mean, it was a few thousand. Out of a population of 5 million. But there's an outsized symbolic importance to that, as in, showing up, right? Visualizing this kind of post-apartheid future in which, white comrades are part of the struggle and are citizens of this new world that we are creating. So there's that dimension. But one of the things we invested quite heavily in campaign-wise was something called the End Conscription campaign, where the idea was basically there's a grievance, a pain point of apartheid for white people, young white men, essentially, are being forced to serve in the regime's army.
See, I didn't know that there was forced conscription into that. Oh, wow!
But there wasn't the enthusiasm for it that there is in Israel. Am I right? Because in Israel, it's since kindergarten, there's a looking forward to it, and now there's a kind of they're traumatized, they're coming back insane. But it doesn't seem to me that there's a mass movement about like we need to change our entire culture. Quite
right, because it is a cultural issue in Israel. It's like social stamina. It's the way that they base self-esteem on the army is wild.
No, it's a much harder ask in Israel, no question. I was just going to say, with the End Conscription campaign, the idea was the people who are running this thing are all basically ANC activists in the underground or whatever. But they understand that the purpose here isn't to build support for the ANC. That purpose here is to weaken the regime, to weaken the most dangerous enemy, the most dangerous element of apartheid, by widening the schism. So even if the minimum consensus was just we don't want to go, we don't want we don't care what happens to South Africa in the future, blah blah blah. We just don't want to be part of this thing. That's fine. Let's build on that, because once you get people active, they get radicalized, for want of a better word.
Right.
That like you look at something like If Not Now, it starts off as not being anti-Zionist.
Right.
It's just against the occupation and it's against like the extreme measures and so on. But the more people become active, the more they begin to understand what's happening here, and they become anti-Zionist. So
you strengthen the principles, and then the contradictions get heightened, and people realize what it's going to take to enact those principles. Right. And by then, they actually believe in them.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting question to be asked here in this space, the United States, right? Because I think the United States is the absolute critical center of power, of Israeli power, in some ways. And so in some ways, anybody organizing for Palestine in this space is kind of behind the lines, as it were. Is organizing in a space where the consensus is basically backing the genocide. In the establishment or whatever. So, what's the strategic purpose of working here? And, I think in some ways it's like working in white South Africa. It's like your primary objective strategically, tactically, is to stop the genocide and to do what you can to muster maximum force around the very simple principle: stop arming Israel, stop covering for Israel, etc. Versus, there's often a bit more of a complicated chemistry that goes on here about how radical people want to be in sort of posture.
Yeah, if you don't publicly and vociferously affirm the principles of, say, the Toabet, or I don't even know how to pronounce it, but I'm often upbraided for not more clearly speaking out in favor of that, and I'm just like, well, I've never condemned it, but what I'm doing here is trying to de-radicalize, fortify, encourage, give people the kind of nutrition they need to feel the courage to even speak out in the face of, employment threats and things like that. I mean, certainly in the Israeli context, there's also the problem. I don't know what the freedom of movement was like for Black South Africans, but you can't get Ramallah to the streets of Tel Aviv. You can't get the Palestinians from Hebron, much less Gaza, to show out in force. So all you're going to get is those who have the luxury, the privilege to show up in those streets, right? So it's not like the Jewish Israelis can join forces with a mass Palestinian movement because of Hafradah, because they're separated.
Right. But also, you think about, for me, strategy is about power, and progressive politics should be centered on the question of power. How do you build the people's camp and weaken the enemy camp, to be really blunt in the language we used in the 80s. So basically, if somebody is coming onto the streets of Tel Aviv to go, I don't want to go to the army because I want to stay on the beach in Tel Aviv and do my whatever IT company or whatever. Now ask yourself, is that strengthening the people's camp? No. Is it weakening the enemy camp? Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And so what's your priority in that space? How many Israelis can you get to sort of, fly the Palestinian flag and whatever, statements of we want to live in a liberated Palestine, versus how many can you get behind, this consensus that Netanyahu operates on the basis of is not good for anyone. We need to stop this. We need to force an end to it. Which is more helpful? It's not saying, it's completely valid to aim for you want people to identify with Palestinian liberation, Israelis to identify with Palestinian liberation, but that's not necessarily the most productive bottom line of your politics. Here also, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, we have a tendency also, I think, number one, to we're very easily sectarian when it comes to like social media posturing. I almost take every insult or every hot take with the largest spoonful of salt, because I go like, this is the natural outcome of people who do the entirety of their organizing online. Like they're not actually organizing, they're commentators. They are text versions of us, essentially. And there's, to me, I don't I just don't breathe any air into that type of sectarianism. They have their place online that you can yell into the void. I personally do not care.
I have a question for you, because for me, I call it like the morbid dialectic of social media, where we wouldn't know about Gaza. Gaza would be dying in the dark if not for social media.
Yep,
but on the other hand, it's a fetish. On the other hand, to the extent that we are holding a phone in our hands and engaging the world with our thumbs, we might as well be playing a first-person shooter video game for all the impact we're having on the real
a rosary of other people's woe.
Yeah.
It's like, what you can only change the world when you put down your phone. Right.
Yes.
And collective action.
Yeah, I mean, but
that's why we record this podcast on our laptops.
That's right, exactly. We're doing
not
our
in
best.
The street. We should be vox popping.
Yeah, we're doing our best to never live in the meat space. We are only digital people. No, but I think you see a lot of online activism for 1,000 different things. I think. For this particular one, this particular cause of there's a genocide happening, you are seeing it bleed. It bleed outside of the internet. It doesn't just exist, online. And I think that to me is, makes it different than a lot that I've seen. You've got people who, half the time I get yelled at for some random thing online. I'm always just like, or people are complaining, about people online or saying this and that. I just say, go outside. You're never going to deal with what you think you're dealing with, outside. No one is ever going to talk to you in whatever way you worry they do, because someone does it online. The difference is you see actual organizing happening that comes, people will do it parasocially through the internet and they will actually come out. And I think what we're seeing now is more so than ever, as someone who's been talking about Israel for a while and talking about what's going on there. This is the first time I've ever seen it almost like a universal understanding of what Israel is, what Zionism is, what they are doing, even in the most basic sense of good guy versus bad guy. For example, the cultural shift can be seen in things like very recently, there was a Coldplay concert. Coldplay apparently brings people up on stage to talk or whatever, like fans. And I want to play a video of something that happened at a Coldplay concert where Chris Martin, I believe is the name of the singer, he asked the people where they're from. And
by the way, folks, if you ever want to know which bands will never appear on What's the Spin, Coldplay is one of them, not because they're politics.
No,
they seem very humanistic and vaguely pro-Palestine, but I just
they're not your speed. I understand. And yeah, so here is Chris Martin. Yes, where do you come from?
Okay, well, listen. I'm gonna say this. I'm very grateful that you're here as humans, and I'm treating you as equal humans on Earth.
So as soon as he asks, where are you from? He says, oh, from Israel. The crowd actually starts to boo those people.
Yeah. They might as well have said depths of hell. Oh, depths of hell. Great. Well,
Yes. Yeah. Well, oh, fun. I have a cousin who lives in the depths of hell. Yeah. And he then goes on to try to calm the crowd. And he says,
regardless of where you come from or don't come from, thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Or don't come from.
Yeah.
If he meant that as shade, eternal respect. Because regardless of where you hail from, where your grandparents come from, or settled and have no actual historical connection to.
Yeah, regardless of whether or not the state you believe is there exists or deserves to, cheers for being here. And then he proceeds to try to calm the crowd further.
Fine. And although it's controversial, maybe, I also want to welcome people in the audience from Palestine, because we have a belief that we're all equally human.
So he says, this may be controversial. I also want to welcome people in the audience who are here from Palestine because we're all equally human. Now,
I don't know who should be more insulted by that, Israelis or Palestinians.
Yeah,
I mean, I get he's just trying to do I'm going to take care of your feelings a little bit and all that. It might be controversial for you, Israelis.
Right. Yes.
Anyway.
But, nice. Before we get into the reactions to that from Israelis, or more so from like Zionist Hezbollah bots online, The thing that I find interesting is, is just the mere mention, like that cultural shift of people jeering when they hear that someone is from Israel. Now, the right wing or Zionists or whatever are going to utilize that for, proof of, a vast anti-Semitic culture.
Go ahead. It's not going to change the fact that the information war has been lost.
Well, right.
And that's why we use the internet.
Sure. What I find interesting about it is the fact that, they can try to spin it whatever way they want. As someone who's like understood or has been screaming from the rooftops for, over a decade about like, no, guys, you don't know. Israel's like fucked up. It's like apartheid and it's like they do genocide and stuff. Like the fact that a general audience now has gotten to the point where just the mere mention makes them vocally upset. That to me is a cultural shift, a huge one. And I we talk a lot about the BDS movement and its origins in the South African liberation struggle. Can you tell me, in terms of like the cultural boycott that was happening, before the end of apartheid, was there this feeling of momentum where you saw that kind of shift happening and then things started happening on the inside?
In a nutshell, basically, apartheid South Africa and Israel are settler colonial regimes. What does that mean? It means that the people who build these systems of power, of apartheid, imagine themselves to be part of the West. They imagine themselves to be the vanguard of the West, of civilization against barbarism. Netanyahu actually said that, right?
Yes.
He says that
Herzl
repeatedly.
said villa in the jungle.
Yeah.
Barak. Yeah, anyway.
Sorry, Barak.
Yes, but
He's the editor, dude. This is what he would do to me.
Fact check.
Fact check. This is who you mean.
But this is really, really important. These guys assume that they are part of the West. That's where their whole sense of legitimacy comes from. Netanyahu will say to Trump or Biden or whatever, yeah, but you guys did Hiroshima and you did the Native American genocide. So you understand what this is. So when anything happens that cuts their sense of being part of the West, when there's any sort of moral reproach that basically says, this is what you're doing here is untenable. We cannot, get behind you. You need to be isolated. That has a huge psychological impact. In South Africa, it was particularly with sport, with rugby, in fact, because that was the regime's game. And blessings to the New Zealand organization, Halt All Racist Tours, that basically disrupted a Springbok rugby tour, like literally people fighting the cops on a rugby field. Like it became untenable to play these games. And that was a huge impact. It was for many, many people in South Africa. This was the first time that it was like, whoa, what's going on here? In Israel, similarly, I think that's why this momentum that's coming in the football soccer space is really, really important, because basically Israelis play their football in Europe. They play in all the club championships, the national team, etc. And there's real momentum building. It won't be done at the top. The corrupt, federations that run the game are not going to have a change of heart. But when things start threatening to get disruptive, that becomes like a challenge to their business model. And that's huge in Israel. I mean, even when, a singer like Lorde, the New Zealand singer, remember she decides not to go to Israel, then they freak out. Like Israeli teenagers are suing her in New Zealand courts. Like it has an outsized impact for
it was
what
one
it
of the,
actually is.
It was one of the things that I found, to be the most interesting thing about the impact of cultural boycotts, and not even in a strict sense boycotts, but like cultural
opprobrium.
Yes, that it would have this impact on the citizens of said country, like specifically in South Africa. The person who wrote the book, who later became the movie Invictus.
Oh, John Carlin. He's a friend of mine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the book is amazing. It's a fantastic book. Yeah. The film is. I mean, it was all right.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
But in that, he describes what you just said was the first time that he had experienced the kind of, I don't know, the people not liking South Africans for whatever reason. It was when he was in New Zealand, and they basically wouldn't let the South African team on the field. Like they were trying to get them to not play, and he didn't understand. Well, what's the big deal? Why do people hate us so much? And I always thought that was fascinating, to kind of be so, I don't know, immune to apartheid, that you don't even see it as like a moral
I remember
evil.
artists against apartheid in the mid-'80s, but when I really knew South Africa was cooked was it Beverly Hills Cop Part 2 or 3?
Yes,
when Eddie Murphy he trolls the South African embassy. He's like, I want to go to South Africa.
Yeah, I totally remember that.
But your blick. But your blick.
Exactly. But I mean, this is like, for me, I think, the thing about sports and cultural boycotts is that they are noticed by the ordinary people, particularly sport. Okay, the people who would be the most politically conservative are watching sport all the time, and so you remove this prop suddenly. What happened? Like, wait, why? Why is this happening? People boycotting hummus. I mean, by all means, it's great, whatever. Nobody notices that in Israel, except the exporters. But if you take away, we're not, Maccabi Tel Aviv gets kicked out of the UEFA Champions League. Whoa, that's, basketball and football are the things that, like, your working class Israeli, or not even say working
Someone's
class.
Someone's going to hear this interview and try to organize the American working class to boycott hummus, and it's just not going to go anywhere.
The dock workers. The dock workers need to
The
dock workers everywhere, man.
Hummus sandwiches.
Did you see that? I'm sure you saw that thing on the weekend. The dock worker from Genoa in Italy.
No.
Saying that basically, if we don't hear from our comrades on that flotilla for 20 minutes, that's it. We're shutting down the ports to all Israeli shipping. And then you think, you've seen the same in Tunisia, you've seen the same in Barcelona, you've seen the same in Oakland for years.
Yes,
like with South Africa,
Oakland,
with Palestine, BLM. And it's like, dock workers, they seem to be the vanguard of internationalism.
They tried that in Vancouver too, where there's a major port.
It's fascinating to see the parallels, between these two moments. This moment we are in the moment that you experienced being, an activist in South Africa. And my one concern has always been regarding this, the fact that Israelis are telling each other the story from early on, that, like, rather than it being a surprise that people hate them, it is a it confirms what I've been told ever since I was a kid.
How are they feeling about the Coldplay thing?
Well, we'll get into that, but I think we need to first take a really quick commercial break. Fair enough. Let's do that. Quick commercial break. Everyone just sit tight. We'll be right back. And we're back. This is Badass Bar, world's most moral podcast, here with Tony Karon. How you doing, Tony? Still good?
Good.
Sweet. So we're talking about Coldplay. Sorry. And this video that went viral of them welcoming two Israeli fans on the stage, and then saying, glad you're here. Also, Palestinians in the audience, I'm glad you're here. The response to this in the Hasbara sphere has been wild. First, I guess I'll show the. I guess this is one of the people who was on stage. Who put this out?
My understanding was this was the caption to the video. So this is the person who originally posted the video of this. I'm not sure if that's the case, but this is a concert goer.
I see. So the person who taped it and or at least posted the video.
Yeah, he's sort of one of the core victims of this hate crime.
Yes. Here we go. This is from at Yaron Samid. My wife and I, both Israeli, have been avid fans of Coldplay for 2 decades. Oh, that's so that's your problem. Traveling around the world to see them in concert several times. All right. That's
I owe Fish fans an apology.
Yeah, I know. You thought they were weird. Oh my God.
The Grateful Comatose.
Yes. That's why the slip up by Chris Martin at Wembley Stadium is especially hurtful. When 2 young
He
Israeli
slipped on a banana peel
he slipped on a banana peel of anti-Semitism.
of coexistence. Or
Yes.
human fellow feeling.
When 2 young Israeli fans joined him on stage, Chris says, "I'm treating you as equal humans on Earth, regardless of where you come from. And, quote, although it's controversial, maybe, I also want to welcome people in the audience from Palestine."
Both of them hateful statements.
Yeah, first of all,
You're
what is
equal.
Is this Der Stürmer? Like, well, who says things like that? Chris, you've always seemed to be a kind, loving person that used music to bring people together. This was a tactless misstep that further tears people apart.
It was all tact. It was nothing but tact.
And tears people apart and deeply hurts some of your most loyal fans. I hope you can take a quiet moment to look back at your choice of words and realize they came from a place of growing prejudice against Israeli people that have been drawn into a war they never asked for, a people that were brutally slaughtered, raped, and burnt alive by Palestinians while dancing at a peace music festival similar to yours, and that are still held hostage nearly 2 years later while you're on stage patronizing 2 of our sisters. You're better than this, or at least I thought so. Signed, a deeply disappointed fan.
Here's where I would make a Coldplay lyrics pun.
Right.
If I knew any Coldplay lyrics.
Yeah, I guess that falls to me. No, I got nothing. Something about yellow. I don't know too much. Tony, are you a big Coldplay guy? I feel it's funny. There's like a few bands out there who I'm like, we were all yellow journalists. Very good, Adam.
Yeah, nice.
Very good.
Always comes through in the crunch.
Like there's a few bands who are out there like this who are like bands that I personally like can't stand, who are at the very least, saying something in support of Palestinians, like Imagine Dragons, where I'm just like,
or Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah, or Dave Matthews. Not my favorite music, but appreciate it. Always appreciate it, even if I never really put your music on because I don't enjoy it in my ears.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was, this is one of those like interesting outrages that only exists in the Hezbollah sphere. You don't see it outside of just kind of the usual suspects. For example, Daniel, one of your favorite people.
Oh,
Dahlia,
fellow Canadian Dahlia Kurtz.
Yes.
We'll be talking about her more on an upcoming episode. I won't spoil it. But yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
Chris Martin told these women he'll treat them like equal humans, even though they're from Israel. It was a close call. He almost lost the crowd, but then he welcomed anyone who may be from, quote, Palestine. Prepare for a boycott of Coldplay. The watermelons are more upset than us. They absolutely are not. I don't know. There's the idea that the pro-Palestine activists are upset about this clip when this clip is clearly just been spread around like pro-Israel, like Hezbollah social media is very funny to me.
Truthfully, I wouldn't blame them if they were a little irritated at it. Like I said, like this may be controversial, but I also want to welcome Palestinians. Out of context, or maybe even in context, there's something rather patronizing and condescending and dehumanizing about that. But I think people can correct for the Chris Martin-ness of the thing, the Coldplay-ness of the thing.
Yeah.
And also enjoy the reaction of the crowd, which is much more the point.
Yes. Yeah. It is. It's interesting. I mean, I think we were talking about this before the break. The cultural shift is something that I've never experienced before. And, this, like I said, the fear that I have is this conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment is sort of, it's still a quite operational wall that a lot of Israelis have.
I think there's something interesting in, as you were saying, the reaction of the crowd. And I think what that tells you is there's been a dynamic over the last couple of years of artists starting to speak out and connecting, obviously, with the people in the crowd who care about Palestine. But the beauty of BDS stuff in general is its jiu-jitsu function. So basically, when the authorities come down, I mean, when Sir Keir Starmer tells you what's cool and what's not cool, you're basically applying a multiplier effect on popular culture's embrace of Palestine. It's like if the people, the horrible people who are running things, who are allowing this genocide, etc., are saying, Palestine action, oh no, right. or kneecap, whatever. You're actually just boosting it, essentially. Right. And I think that's what's happened. That's why you mentioned Israel in a crowd going to any genre of forgettable music. That's now been popularized, generalized.
And you're right, it is like this interesting multiplier effect where it's like you've got as soon as you are telling people that this is a no-go area, or you start legally punishing people for support of Palestine, that is it only helps. It only increases the awareness, at least in everyday people's mind, of well, I can very clearly see who has the power in these situations, and it sure as hell isn't the activists. It sure as hell is not the Palestinians or anyone supporting them. So it's a fascinating time, and I do enjoy watching Hezbollah still bite. They're still taking the bait, and they're still writing these angry screeds about any type of cultural thing, whether it's a musician who speaks out or a TV show host that they like saying something. That every time they need to they ramp up the outrage machine. And you can only hope that their own personal, it's their own personal clout is a more, is more of a motivator for them than the actual existence or continuing existence of Israel.
Well, it's moved in the cultural space, I think, from Zionism. Simply, Zionism is not cool, but actually Zionism is very uncool.
Yeah.
It's like the worst thing that you can be in that kind of youth culture globally.
Yeah.
So
it's lame.
Progress. Yeah. That's
what we try to do here. Let people know it's lame.
Finkelstein used to make the argument, and has recently, that the term Zionism is useless in an organizing space or counterproductive because no one knows what it is. We should call it Jewish supremacy, which actually describes something. But I don't know that he's correct. I mean, maybe both things can be true. I think in one sense, the sort of sectarian doctrinaire tendencies in activism, thinking we need to speak with Frantz Fanon rigor and precision is not how you reach the masses, right? But at the same time, one way or another now, people do know what Zionism is because people see what Zionism does and what's self-proclaimed. If we didn't have self-proclaimed Zionists, this is the difference.
Yes.
You didn't have apartheid segregationists calling themselves proud settler colonialists, but Zionism is a term of affection for Zionists, and they broadcast it, and we see how they act. So great, the brand is tarnished. Why not use that?
I think what you just said there, you really you're nailing something really, really important, is that in this culture, particularly of kind of social media activism, there's a tendency to sort of imagine the world as if it's a literary criticism seminar. It isn't. It's like, battles over terminology and that kind of, as you say. I mean, Fanon is an incredibly important thinker that we consult, but you're not going to reach the masses by sort of channeling Fanon. That's like a different space.
Yeah. And I think it more speaks to. I'd love to take credit for the fact that people now see Zionism and immediately think settler colonialism, genocide enjoyer.
I think we've made a contribution to the word Hasbara.
Well, at the very least that. But it is interesting seeing the fact that people are now becoming aware of it, and so you can talk about Zionism, and a lot of it is, again, this like you said, force multiplier of telling people over and over what Zionism means to me, and then having people who are self-proclaimed Zionists be like, yeah, ethnic cleansing, good. So it's like, people are becoming very educated in what these terms actually...
And then being like, why is everybody always picking on me?
Yeah. Speaking of everybody always picking on me, I want to move the conversation to talk about a recent interview that Adam Friedland did with Representative Ritchie Torres. Now, this interview was, it came out last week sometime, and it has been, the subject of a lot of discussion. He went on Adam Friedland's comedy show. If you don't know Adam Friedland, he comes from a podcast called Come Town. He is a comedian. I would say he's like one of those like irony pilled guys. He's like us in a lot of senses. Not necessarily
with less sincerity in his public approach. Usually, almost
no sincerity. Usually,
he sort of plays almost a character of a clueless, glib, sardonic millennial.
Yeah, and he's done a few interviews. He has a show, the Adam Friedland Show. He's done interviews with people like Chris Cuomo, who Chris Cuomo called him a bad Jew and like a self-hating Jew to his face, which is hilarious for us.
Norman Finkelstein wondered aloud, what am I even doing on this show? But he was having a good time.
Yes.
I mean, they played together.
He spoke to Anthony Weiner and mostly kept the interview about the fact that it's really funny that his name is Weiner, and he kept showing his Weiner. So he's a comedian. He does comedic interviews, but he did this interview with Ritchie Torres, and I want to play a little bit of it and kind of talk about the reaction that people had to it. Here is one of the clips.
There's this fixation with kids at a school and two examples of people at a restaurant that there was bang.
No, so he's talking to Ritchie Torres, who, if you watch the show, you know who he is. He's a representative. I think he represents the Bronx, but I'm not entirely sure. Somewhere
highest
in New York.
Rate of child poverty of any district in the United States.
And he mostly, like his at least since October 7th, but before then too, he is a vocal supporter of Israel, and he's remained a vocal supporter of Israel, post October 7th.
He's also the first gay person of color in Congress. He grew up in poverty in the Bronx, so he's he has this scrappy, not rags to riches, but rags to power story, which he then, I don't know if we'll play that clip, but he sort of says that was in some sense the gateway to him sympathizing with the plight of Israelis.
Yes.
When he went there on a...
Well, right. He went on a free trip to Israel, and it was the first time he had ever been outside of the country, which, is an interesting...
And he visited Sderot, and he could only, having grown up in the Bronx, he could only empathize with the plight of Israelis who are routinely bombed.
Yes.
And then Friedland asks him, well, did you go visit how Palestinians live? And he said, well, I support a two-state solution. I mean, just completely, as we're going to see here, completely robotic, pre-programmed, glitchy answers to direct questions having anything to do with, do you have any human compassion for Palestinians or know anything about their plight?
Yes.
Examples. I mean, there are surveys on it. Read the ADL surveys on it. Because
it's hard. ADL surveys.
Yeah. So he in this clip he's talking about like the claims of campus anti-Semitism and the way that kind of overtakes any discussion when it is not nearly as prominent or important as the amount of genocide that is happening. and he's arguing with him.
It's hard for me to talk about this in public because you're being a dick. That's mean.
No, I'm not being mean. It's clear it's an emotional topic.
All right, I'll share with you what happened.
I'm not.
I lived there.
I don't intend to be mean. So.
Sir, I lived there when I was 18, and I grew up a Zionist. And we were told, and our whole community in this country is told, that we have to defend Israel and love Israel because it will stop the Holocaust. It will stop another Holocaust from happening. And my dad was born in 1951. That was 6 years after these atrocities. His friends' parents, he knew these people that had been through this hell, these skeletons. And it terrified us. And the understanding in our community is that we have to defend Israel. But I lived there, and I went to a settlement at the end of my year there, and I looked down a hill at a Palestinian village, and I saw how they lived, and I turned back and I looked at the settlement and saw how they lived. And people live in a world where they're demeaned and dehumanized and surveilled constantly by people and this isn't in Gaza, by people in SWAT team outfits with semi-automatic weapons, and that's what the world is seeing. And you keep telling me that the problem is someone's getting yelled at a restaurant? I'm sorry.
You're conflating two different issues. So I don't
Please. Me saying this to you right now will hurt people in my own family, okay? Because this is a very important thing to us. And the fact that I still fucking care about being Jewish is embarrassing. I should just be a guy. But this feels like a stain on our history. And it feels like it's changed what being Jewish is. Because what being Jewish isn't Israel. Judaism has existed for 4,000 years. This is a country for 75 years. You know, like, it is the oldest, one of the oldest monotheistic religions. Anti-Semitism is one of the oldest forms of hatred. People in my life are going to be mad at me about this, but I'm saying this because I am Jewish. You know, and I don't understand why you would be.
Look how you define.
I want to have.
I feel like I'm here to be lectured, not.
Shut up. That's not nice. You can't talk that way.
I love it. He tells him to shut up at that point.
Honestly, I do wish Adam would cut to the chase there. I mean, God love him for doing this interview. No, I really do. I really do. I think it would actually be even more effective. And I'm not dismissing the interview. Some of the criticisms of the interview have been completely in bad faith. I think it's useful. I think ultimately it served its purpose. But in that entire clip takes up a lot of space, and he's coming at it from a lot of angles, but not quite getting to the center of the thing, which is you are supporting genocidal, horrific policies. And I find myself a little impatient with it. I'm sure Ritchie Torres did too. But again, this is not a diss of Adam whatsoever. I really appreciate it, but I just felt the need to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that, and I looked at him, as that's a genuine moment from a guy who does not really do genuine moments, which
That's true.
I always appreciate, especially on this topic. What's interesting about this interview and kind of where it goes is that he is attempting to talk to a person who the only feelings he recognizes are the feelings of Jews, period, when it comes to this issue. If he were a Palestinian, it wouldn't matter. He's not appealing to him on any level that he wouldn't understand. He's appealing to him something he would, which is I'm a Jew and this is hurting Jews, and you keep claiming you're fighting in favor of the Jewish people. Yeah, I think what's interesting about it is the way that he has since been, attacked for what I think are very real feelings about a lot of Jews in the United States and in the West, secular Jews, diaspora Jews, even some religious Jews, which is that the premium that's put on this identity has come to a point where I think it is not unnatural to say, I don't want to associate myself with this. I don't know. Tony, how maybe you feel, but like having to explain yourself as being, separate from Israel seems to be something that causes a lot of tension for both the left and the right, where people, want to, say that, the Zionists say that it is anti-Semitic in and of itself for a Jew to say they don't want to be associated with Israel. And then on the left, you've got people who say like it is not, you're taking a sort of narcissistic approach and being like, well, this isn't my fault. What are your thoughts about the, sort of the way in which the use of our feelings as Jews is used to talk about this issue in particular?
I think there's a really overwhelming priority for all of us, people like us, to really escalate that struggle to separate and to separate Zionism from the way in which the world sees us, sees Jews, because I think we actually, obviously there are not as many of us as there should be, but there's this real sense that what the Zionists have done effectively and are doing right now with the genocide is kind of making anti-Semitism great again. Because basically, to the extent that the world buys the notion that to challenge Israel, i.e. to challenge this apartheid, racist, genocidal state is anti-Semitic, that effectively at some point starts to legitimize anti-Semitism. It's like, for people who don't know the issues, if people are saying this is being done on behalf of Jews, well, that makes it no more acceptable to most decent human beings. So basically, what the Israeli side and the pro-Israel side are doing is to basically essentially start to legitimize anti-Semitism by defining it as any resistance to Israel, what Israel is, right? An apartheid state, a settler colonial state, and a state engaged in genocide. That's not, I don't buy there's a delusional thing in some, you get it in the 92nd Street Y circles in New York. I'm like, no, but this isn't the real Israel. This is the Israel that Bernie Sanders saw on his kibbutz in the early 60s. Like, dude, that was a fantasy to begin with. Yes. Those were the people who did the Nakba, was the left Zionists. But also, like, you can't, in human community interaction, in our interactions with one another, we judge people by what they do, by their actions, not by what they say about themselves. Yes. That's how you measure people in your personal life. So obviously, it's the same with the state. Forget what Zionists tell you about who they are, what they are, etc. It's blindingly obvious for the whole world what Israel is. And so, yes, I mean, so when you say people on the left saying, wait, how are you trying to separate yourself? It's like, no, you're buying a bullshit there about this connection. Should we be doing more to differentiate ourselves and to challenge Zionism's right to speak for Jews? Of course, like that, 100%. But I see this come up, like, if you're a 25-year-old from Gaza, right, what Jews have you ever interacted with?
Right.
Only people who are trying to kill you in military gear emblazoned with the Star of David.
Right.
So that is your sum total of your experience of Jews. How would you,
people whose nationality cards call them Jewish, not Israeli. Right. People who say they're doing it for the continuation of the Jewish people. Of course, your term for them is going to be Yehud.
And then, do people, people in sort of liberal kind of pearl clutching society expect those people to make a distinction between Jews and Zionists? When the people doing the killing aren't making that distinction. That's a real problem. I do think Zionism has done more to amplify, accelerate, and generalize anti-Semitism in this moment than anything we've seen for the last century.
Yeah. And, he talks about this to Ritchie Torres, who spends a good portion of it trying to deflect with this line where it's like, oh, you're trying to make an excuse for anti-Semitism. There is no excuse for anti-Semitism, to which I would say, largely, of course, I agree that I would never excuse anti-Semitism. What I would have said is, yes, and I believe it is you and the state of Israel, you as in Ritchie Torres and the ideology he supports and the state that he supports, that is doing the most anti-Semitism.
And not accidentally either, because they need the anti-Semitism out there. It's their chief product and it's their chief fuel source.
Yes. It is. It's how they continue. And it is one of the reasons why I think that attempt to separate culturally, societally, Western or wherever, diaspora Jews who are saying this state does not represent us is important, because one of the fundamental pillars that is holding up, at least, from a PR standpoint, is the fact that you've got people who believe that this conflation is set in stone and is real, and it's a pillar that needs to be torn down. It's why it is essential. It's why people, have their list of, quote, token anti-Zionist Jews that, the Zionists love to talk about. Oh, these are all tokens. It's like, well, the reason that people are, as they say, tokenizing them is because of the fact that they are being told that this idea that all Jews walk in lockstep with Israel is not real, and they are collecting more and more information about that.
I agree with that with two caveats. Number one, we shouldn't claim any false victories and pretend as if there's a massive groundswell of Jews with any power who are standing up against the Jews in our community who claim to represent it. I think we have to allow ourselves to be honest enough to say that the Jewish community does not look good right now, and people should not be contorting themselves to remember that, oh no, the real essence of Judaism is goodness. Well, no, I mean, look, we got to show and prove, right? And I'm not gonna lecture anyone or browbeat anyone to being like, no, but just remember Einstein and remember Freud and remember Mandy Patinkin. Like, cool. Like, all those examples exist. Cool. And Jonathan Greenblatt is the self-appointed and much anointed spokesperson for American Jewry. That's number one. Number two, we should just be cognizant that while we're doing all this separating of ourselves from Zionism, right? And all of this distinguishing ourselves and having our podcast, which people appreciate and all of that, and brings on all kinds of great guests, right? There are Palestinians who are having to live through this every day, and they may not be as excited about an Adam Friedland doing this with Ritchie Torres. They may be very impatient, and they certainly are waiting to be asked questions about their experience, and their authority on the matter is certainly no less than ours. And if we're going to privilege, if we're going to think that the lived experience of people to whom Zionism has happened first and foremost matters, then it should be as close to the center as ours, if not closer. And I don't walk around talking about decentering or deplatforming any of that shit, but any cultural space in which we're not listening to what Palestinians have to say is bankrupt.
Just to clarify, because I don't think you need to beat yourself up on this one. The context in which I'm understanding the discussion we're having is within a Jewish space that's designed to demobilize the most dangerous enemy of the Palestinians, which is, so we are all mindful, we are all 100% supporting the Palestinian liberation, so speaking for myself at least, no question. This is about the strategic imperatives of a particular space from which the Zionists draw most of their power, and the need to demobilize. It's, this is not about platforming, decentering. It's not about visibility. It's not about recognition. It's not an identity politics thing. It's about power. And that's, you don't need to make excuses for the kind of discussion we're having, because this is 100% in line, certainly in the South African liberation experience, with the strategic objectives of liberation. You have to have a strategy for weakening the most dangerous enemy. That's kind of what we're doing here. Yeah. Also, Daniel, I agree with you. Let's not claim easy victories or imagine them. But I take a certain degree of encouragement, certainly, from the fact that 67% of New York Jews under the age of, I think it's 40 or 55, or I think it's 40, are voting for Zoran.
Yeah, you should.
Despite the interests that are running against him, switching on the anti-Semitism blaring siren. So
that's not an easy victory,
not working.
Nor is it a false victory.
No,
that's a very real shift, and
it's telling you that
discontinuous, unpredictable, and very promising, I think.
And that the Holocaust weapon is jamming.
Yeah,
it's like you can't be doing a Holocaust and keep saying, but the Holocaust. It's
right.
It starts to become so.
The kickback on that motherfucker is it's like that nail gun from season 4, episode 1 of The Wire.
Yes, exactly.
Kickback some motherfucker.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I in no way. First of all, I would say that a good percentage of this podcast is us saying sorry that we have a podcast.
It's true.
But so it's at this point it's tradition. Yeah, no, I also
Matt, you got to play the sound.
Oh, that's right. In some way,
Baruch
it is. I gotta find it. I just have too many. Oh, there it is. There we go. In some ways, it is tradition. But yeah, I agree in terms of the fact that we are seeing these things. You know, as much as I am trying to not pat ourselves, and I'm not patting ourselves. We didn't make 67% of New Yorkers, Jewish New Yorkers, vote for Zoran. But it is nice to see that cultural shift happening, and we should be excited about that, especially since, you know, you are seeing these attacks that have been levied for decades. I've seen this kind of line of attack, especially politically, the ones that you see against Zoran or against anyone who speaks out against Israel, be incredibly effective for a long time, to a degree where, you know, I thought Roger Waters was an anti-Semite, an avowed anti-Semite when I was younger, because I read that he was. And you're now seeing, like you said, this machine sort of jamming, and I can always kind of tell as to where the strategy is working and is effective in terms of how many Iron Dome missiles they fire at the particular like cultural changes. When you get pushback on Chris Martin giving a milquetoast statement like, I'm glad Israelis are here, I also love Palestinians, like that's how you know, oh, this is threatening. So strategically you can see at least some result, or you can trust that a result is happening. There was an article that came out regarding this interview, that the article actually happened in 2024, but Tablet re-released it or pushed it out as a response to Adam Friedland's interview with Ritchie Torres. Here's the tweet that they put out. Adam Friedland says, Israel, quote, ruined being Jewish for the rest of us. But the idea that Jewish virtue depends on Jewish powerlessness is both remarkably stupid and deeply selfish.
That's so specious. That's just so fucking dishonest.
Yeah. So they did an article.
Adam's not like, we loved being powerless and then you had to go ruin it. That's not the fucking point.
Yeah. As if he was like, I only like us when we're dead.
But basically, when they say powerless, they mean the alternative to powerlessness is Jewish supremacy.
Right.
I'll take powerlessness. Thank you.
Right. Exactly. If those are the choices, you are giving us a binary choice, either Jewish supremacy and a Jewish fronted genocide, or powerlessness. And it's like, well, you leave me no choice. Like, what are you doing?
This article is going to accuse you of cowardice and moral abdication for making that choice.
Yes. So here is
The Jewish Oyster Problem by Andres Spokonoy. Okay, Spokoiny. Now, I need to tell you who Andres Spokoiny is.
Yes.
He is the president and CEO of the Jewish Funders Network. Okay, which is a Jewish philanthropy organization that does yearly conferences in San Diego. And they, or at least the last one was in San Diego. And they're obviously doing conferences with rich Jews to talk about immersive Holocaust and Israel education for kids and funneling shit tons of money into Zionist propaganda.
Just why do you have to call it the Jewish funders net? It's just like it's like when they made the Jewish News Syndicate. Like, don't do this to us. Don't keep naming your thing something that I fucking Goebbels would have written about. Just
Why don't they call it JUG, the Jewish Usurers Group?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Poundo Flesh Incorporated. Stop
the
doing
large
this.
nose Shylock consortium.
Yeah, I swear to God, everything they've done, it's like every single one it was named by 4chan. All right.
In the Kuzari, one of the great Jewish philosophical treatises of the Middle Ages, Rabbi Judah Halevi depicts a fictional dialogue between the king of the Khazars and a rabbi. Khazars.
Oh, no.
Speaking of 4chan, the rabbi points out that Jews are peace-loving and that they don't kill like others. We can imagine the wink of the Khazar when he says, "This might be so if your humility were voluntary, but it is involuntary. And if you had power, you would slay." Ooh, sassy.
Yeah, slay, bitch.
Ouch, responds the rabbi, or more precisely, quote, "Thou hast touched our weak spot, O king of the Khazars." Judah Halevi understands that there's nothing intrinsically more moral about Jews. It was our tribulations that made us uniquely nonviolent. And absent those, we may well revert to being like any other people and slay just like them. It says we may well, but I think he means we may as well.
Yeah.
Like, let's just go ahead and do it.
We might as well. We're in power.
Right. And if there's nothing intrinsically more moral about Jews, then why is Israel the most moral army?
Right.
What confers that upon them? Anyway.
And why is everything, put in the frame of this it's a moral imperative that this state exists as opposed to other states,
Right.
Like,
he seems to be saying that our morality not only is not correlated with power, but he's saying it's actually derived from power.
Right.
Yet, while aware of that reality, and there are words for political movements that believe in that. Might makes right?
Yeah.
Yet, while aware of that reality, Judah Halevi didn't oppose the reestablishment of Jewish sovereignty. Rather, the opposite. There's a proto-Zionism in Halevi that led him to emigrate to Jerusalem. He emigrated to Jerusalem, therefore he believed in the creation of a Jewish modern ethno-state 600 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he moved there, what century did he move there to become a Likudnik?
The 15th. And he moved there and declared himself chief potentate of
right.
the old city.
That was the other dude, Shabbatai Tzvi. He declared himself the Moshiach. But
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. And
I need to go there and do that.
We have words for those in Judaism, too. In his native Spain, he had experienced the vulnerability of living at the whims of both Muslim and Christian rulers.
Oh, the Muslim rulers with whom Jews were allied.
The convivencia.
In Spain. It's like...
he saw powerlessness as an unmitigated tragedy, and he illustrated as a moral failing the attempt to disguise that powerlessness as a virtue. This is what you get from the fact that he moved to Jerusalem? Okay. Some modern thinkers, however, turn powerlessness on its head and present this tragedy, which has cost Jews millennia of persecution, as a virtue. In the 19th century, the Jewish Enlightenment considered the Jews a spiritual people, untroubled by the messy realities of political power, and thus capable of developing a higher form of morality. The Jewish existentialist Franz Rosenzweig saw Judaism's uniqueness as a result of this position, quote, outside of history, giving us a timelessness that other religions lack. Hannah Arendt echoed that sentiment, quote, Jewish history offers the extraordinary spectacle of a people which began its history with a well-defined concept of history and an almost conscious resolution to achieve a well-circumscribed plan on earth, and then, without giving up this concept, avoided all political action for 2,000 years.
Yeah. I mean, just like the more I'm reading this, the more I'm realizing how you can just, if you're doing Hasbara, you can switch between Jewish exceptionalism and Jews are just like, everybody, like from one page to another. Just this idea of like, well, first of all, just so you know, the idea of Jews being a moral, liberal people, is racist against Jews, because we are actually, just as psychopathic as the rest of us, but we are the most important, most moral psychopaths who have existed, and we need to. It's like it just.
And also, we've been denied our opportunity
itself.
to exercise our right to psychopathy for so long. It's our time.
Right. That's all this is. That's all this is.
I mean, this is like a 20th century movement, essentially,
yes.
Which is Zionism, and the idea of creating a Jewish state, desperately trawling through. I mean, it's just like the whole history of Zionist archaeology, trying desperately to find the evidence that we've always been here. We've always wanted a state. My favorite example of this, and I mean, you can't believe Netanyahu understands just how stupid many American journalists are, right?
Yes, clearly.
So there's a George Will column from the early years of Obama, right, where he says, in his office in a cabinet on the wall, Mr. Netanyahu has a ring. Inside this ring is inscribed the name of a Jewish official from 2,000 years ago. You're what? Okay.
Yes.
The name Netanyahu. Obama doesn't know who he's dealing with, is what we'll write. So unpack this for a minute. Okay, put aside the nonsense of Jewish officials 2,000 years ago in what was a village, essentially. There's the question of like, well, what does Netanyahu mean? It means given by God. So was this somebody's first name? Because 2,000 years ago, Jews only had patronyms. There were no last names. And everybody knows that the Netanyahu family name is Milikovsky. Like that. So, it's a nom de guerre that is Netanyahu. So it's like, what exactly are you claiming here? What you're essentially demonstrating is nothing other than the utter ignorance that prevails in U.S. newsrooms among many of its top journalists.
Right.
Well, Netanyahu tried to force that ignorance upon the rock group Aerosmith when they visited. He proudly showed that trinket, and he kept trying to make an Aerosmith song title reference jokes like, well, I know you don't want to miss a thing. So
exactly. Go to Tel Aviv and dance at the beach. You'll see a lot of dudes who look like a lady.
And we are fine with that here, but they can't get married. Then this next slide talks about sort of paying short shrift to the concept of Jewish genius like Kafka, Spinoza, and Freud, and the notion that vulnerability in the diaspora could give Jews a unique moral position to comment on society, which is something that I actually value very much. But I guess that makes me... the article is going to tell me what that article does. This is interesting here. Zionism called the bluff of Jews falling in love with their own oppression, seeing it as a form of dysfunctional cowardice transformed into virtue. In Chaim Nachman Bialik's poem, by the way, he's a forebear of Mayim Bialik, her great-grandfather, I think, In the City of Slaughter, written after the pogrom of Kishinev, there's no empathy for the victims, but devastating and bitter mockery. And I won't read the clip from the poem here. You can go and read it. It's true. The poem is quite bitter, but it starts off with an uncanny description of Gaza today. Shredded bodies flung against walls and all of that. But it's a very victim-blamey poem. Zionism understood that Jews did not avoid all political action, but that they were forced to avoid it. Normalizing the Jewish people, therefore, paradoxically demanded a revolt against the destiny of powerlessness that characterized the Jews for 2,000 years. As David Ben-Gurion wrote in, also not his given name, 1944. What was his name, Tony?
I don't remember.
It was definitely very Polish.
No, it wasn't. It was like a Yiddish-Polish name.
Yeah. All other revolutions, both past and future, were uprising against a system, against a political, social, and economic structure. Our revolution is directed not only against a system, but against destiny, against the unique destiny of a unique people. That's an incredible quote.
Yeah.
So
fuck you, God. It's Hasadiba Igowai for Jews.
His name was David Gruen. I just looked it up. But what's interesting there, okay, for all of this Bubamais, because that's really what this is. And we can talk about Bubamais. Bubamais. Hello.
Is that bullshit in Yiddish?
Well, it's got it's a tall tale. In Yiddish.
Okay.
It's mistrans. I can't believe you guys grew up without Bubamais.
No.
No. I grew up with.
You're such an impoverished, the Zionist erasure of Yiddish is really telling
seriously.
her. But basically, okay, for all of this like highfalutin rubbish that he's talking about, what proportion of Jews in America migrated to Israel for this destiny that of a people of which they're a part, for this power that they're so lacking, etc. Like, where do the majority of the world's Jews live? The Zionism I grew up with was premised on the idea that the diaspora was doomed, the galut, as they called it, meaning the exile, and that you had to basically get into this shelter just in time because it was all going to come down, etc. And, basically, most of the Jews of the West stayed away. Tony,
you misunderstand the Zionist text. The whole idea was to buck destiny by giving this unique people a plan B in their back pocket in case the Holocaust ever happens, right?
That's right.
So the idea is to live comfortably in Western states where they're pretty much not persecuted or oppressed, but just to have an exit strategy if they need one, and fuck whoever we need to ethnically cleanse in order to secure that insurance policy.
Right, but that wasn't if you asked Ben Gurion about it, he'd be like, no.
Of course.
Everybody has to come. Everybody has to come. So why don't they? Why when Jews are free? Yes. But it's like amazing how much Cheder Hebrew is stuck in my head still.
Ulpan is no joke, man. They really shove it in there. The endpoint of the unique Jewish destiny of powerlessness would soon become plain. Those enamored, this fucking Holocaust eschatology, those enamored with Jewish powerlessness should have forever been chastened by the Holocaust. The Shoah proved that powerlessness is not some abstract philosophical exercise, but the very real extermination of our people. Some Jews still believe that our lack of sovereignty might have produced moral excellence. The point is a debatable one. What can't be denied... Well, I'm glad he concedes that it's debatable.
Yeah,
what can't be denied is that it produced an inconceivable amount of suffering. How else... I can hear the ghost of Herzl saying, "Did you think this would end?" Yeah, Herzl's at my house. He's in the next room being like, "Told you so."
No, but where he is actually is hanging in a portrait in the boardroom or main meeting room at the New York Times.
Right. Yeah.
Curiously enough,
more than one portrait, by the way.
Exactly,
there's one portrait and then one candid. It is. That's where he is, and that's where he's saying, "Told you so."
Yeah, I'd like to think that my great-grandparents, before the gas was turned on in the Auschwitz gas chambers, were visited by the ghost of Herzl, saying, "How did you think this was going to end?"
Yeah,
but this. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but Zionism became a majority movement is actually not, is highly debatable. You have to think, without American anti-Semitism, right? Okay, take the numbers between, say, 1899 and 1925. How many Jews from the Russian Empire migrate from the Yiddish Haim to Palestine?
Right.
60 to 80,000.
Right.
In the same period, how many migrate to the United States? Right. 2.3 million.
Yes.
And then the gates are shut in 1925. Right. So basically, what proportion of the people who actually go to Palestine, European Jews, are actually Zionists or simply people who have no alternative? That this is the only gate that's open to them. So are they ideologically committed Zionists? No, I don't think.
Right. Yeah. It is this assumption that like every single person who immigrated to Palestine after the Holocaust or during the Nazis' rise to power, they all went there saying Herzl was right. This is the only solution. Like it's the Zionist urge to superimpose a right-wing settler colonial ideology onto every single Jew, who was ever even visited on birthright.
This march back to power from the abyss of powerlessness is nothing short of one of the major transformations in human history. This march back to power from the abyss of powerlessness is nothing short of one of the major transformations in human history, second only to the march back to power from the abyss of the Treaty of Versailles the great Reich of Deutschland.
Yes. Both were really great marches.
Most improved player award goes to. Yet for some, 6 million dead wasn't enough proof that powerlessness kills the powerless. They have an unmitigated nostalgia for the times in which Jews could claim the purity of the mortal white shroud that gets buried without ever being soiled by the messy exercise of political action and sovereignty. This guy's not a bad writer. He's a shitty thinker, but these sentences do have a certain snap to them.
Yeah.
According to the anti-Zionist writer Michael Seltzer, for example, quote, Jewish ethics and purpose derive from the rejection of power, from the actual contempt of power, which pervades the Jewish ethos. Well, yeah, I mean, if you listen to the prophets, that is true. If you give a shit about, like, fucking the rabbinical tradition and the Talmudic tradition. Anyway, Old Testament kind of loves power, or blood at least.
Right.
Judaism, for Seltzer, constitutes a revolution to, quote, radicalize the world through Jewish powerlessness and suffering. In his view, Israel represents a bad counter-revolution against the noble, eternal Jewish essence of victimhood.
Again, like we're superimposing this one very particular, quote onto the entire idea that there would be any sort of anti-Zionist movement. But beyond that, it's like, we're also victim blaming again. We're back to the Zionist victim blaming. Yeah, this self-hatred of this type of powerless, this weak Jew that went like lambs to the slaughter. And I don't see how we can continue this constant haranguing of people who literally like they get their at least their PR, their entire PR is based on the idea of Jewish victimhood and Jewish powerlessness. It's not like Israel presents itself as like, well, no, guys, we are Nazi Germany and we're doing Nazi stuff. They present it as constant existential threat. So who's really doing the, using the victimization of Jews here? Like, it's just entirely insane.
And I love this, without ever being soiled by the messy exercise of political action and sovereignty. It sounds like fucking Sorkin. It's like, this is how the kreplach is made. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If we ate sausage, we'd see how that was made too.
Maybe Imre Kertész, which sounds like a Hungarian name, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, best synthesized the bargain that Jews needed to make. During a visit to Israel, a foreign journalist, aware of Kertész's humanist and pacifist leanings, asked him, how does it feel for you to see a Star of David on a tank? Apropos of what Tony said earlier, right? Much better than seeing it on my concentration camp uniform, he answered.
I mean, it's this binary again. We're back to the binary of powerlessness.
How does it feel to be raping that puppy? Much better than being raped by the puppy.
But also, I mean, that quote, I don't know if any of you have read Pankaj Mishra's book, the World After Gaza.
No,
he's the one who reports the. Wasn't he the one who reported that Biden, that Menachem Begin was shocked by Biden's suggestion that they bomb women and children?
He's got a lot of, but basically he synthesized the entire canon of Jewish Holocaust survivor literature. And let's just say that quote in there doesn't quite capture what the Primo Levis of the world were saying, which was actually, a lot of those Holocaust survivors who were writers were absolutely horrified, not by the creation of Israel, because, that's in a moment of desperation, but by what Israel turned out to be. Not now, not after October 7th, but, from the 1950s onwards.
Right. One of the most striking things in this conversation was right at the very beginning, Tony, at least to me, was when you said that in the 1970s you went to Israel and said, this looks familiar coming from South Africa. I've always thought that the apartheid metaphor came about maybe towards the first Intifada, late 80s, but that it was evident to you at the time as a Habonimnik tells me that there was even some backpedaling, there was some regressing by the time I was coming up, but that it was evident in the 70s is remarkable to me.
I mean, just from when you went into the West Bank, for example, and actually the Habonim Matrichim at Kibbutz Yisrael, where I was, were basically, because Begin had just come to power, and Sharon was expanding the settlements as fast as he could, and the Habonim Madrikim was saying this is basically apartheid in the making, because basically if the Israelis don't give up the West Bank, then they're going to be ruling over 3-4 million Palestinians that have no rights, no citizenship, no status.
Right.
That is apartheid, 100%. Apartheid is not just segregation. Apartheid is a form of colonialism where a people is ruled by a state in which they are not citizens.
That's right. And you talked about how the kibbutzniks did the Nakba. Well, they also did the settlement movement in the 70s. It was labor that was in power that put the majority of the settlers in there, as far as I understand. Anyway, wow. The article goes on. I guess we can link to it if people want to read the whole thing in the show notes.
It's a fascinating line of attack on any, what I would say, the Adam Friedlands of America, which are kind of like Jews who grew up with Israel as being this good thing, and are now seeing what Israel is doing in the name of Jews and going like, ugh, if I have to choose between, doing a genocide or being genocided, it's like you're putting me in this awful position of having to choose. And yeah, you know what? I don't think I want to be a part of this. And of course, people are taking that and turning it into apologia or whatever.
I would just add, though, that there's an incredible difference for this generation, just at scale. Because Jewish anti-Zionism, certainly in the 1980s in South Africa, and pretty much everywhere else. I remember coming here in the 90s and PEP, progressive except for Palestine. You'd have complete lefties who would just turn into Likudniks when the question of Israel came up. So the idea of walking away from Israel, from the tent camp, from the lager, or whatever you want to call it, was a little scary. Like you're going out into a world where your tribe is no longer embracing you. It feels, emotionally risky in a way.
Sure.
But you have to do it because, for me, I was really lucky with that sense in the liberation movement in South Africa, that it was also a space in which a lot of Jewish people were very prominent and had leading roles. It wasn't like, it wasn't like you didn't see any Jewish space. It was a huge Jewish space in the liberation movement. But the scale of Jewish rejection of Zionism and actually existing Zionism, like what Israel is doing, is huge now. It's not. It doesn't take much. There's a huge. It's like come and join the party. It's like it's a cost of tens of thousands, which it wasn't many years ago.
Yeah, no, and of course, that cost is atrocious and horrifying. And it is one of those fucked up silver linings of this moment is seeing a complete mask off moment for Israel and for Zionism in general, and people if you better late than never, and it's I've never been more, I don't know, like kind of more optimistic at least about the momentum that is building up when it comes to Jews, but also non-Jews in countries who are starting to have this kind of knee-jerk disgust for what Israel is doing and doing it in our name or in the name of Jews in general.
It's quite something to be both like all-time pessimistic and all-time optimistic at the same time.
Yeah,
which kind of sums up how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
But Tony,
Antonio Gramsci had a term for that: was pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Or what did Chomsky say? Tactically pessimistic, strategically optimistic. And and your perspective on this is so valuable, and you've brought such great insight to this conversation. So we can't thank you enough for
thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
You're also a natural fit for the third seat. Like, I hope you'll be available.
Anytime
Yeah, truly. I could do this for another 2 hours, but we will spare the audience that for now. Tony, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thank you to everyone out there listening. Patreon.com/badasbara for all of our bonus episodes. badasbara@gmail.com for all your questions, comments, and concerns. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. And until next time, from the river to the sea.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Karon is Sharon. Wise strategy.
Say again.
Karon is caring is sharing.
Oh, Karon.
Tony Karon is
sharing.
Wise. No, Karon is not Sharon. I didn't realize that Sharon is also a woman's name.
And a certain Israeli general war criminal, yes.
Yes, Sharon. Karon is Sharon.
Worst sign-off ever? Possibly.
We're keeping it in.
Jumping jacks was us. Push-ups was us. Krav Maga us. All karate us.